Welcome to English Stories 1, 2, 3. Please enjoy the story. Hunting My Skeleton Husband. Author, Tuzi, Xiao. Synopsis. Ju, the youngest commander of the Silver Military Alliance, fell into a coma during a battle against the Sequencers. When he woke up, he found himself exiled to a desolate planet and stripped of part of his memory. Looking at the mottled bruises on his chest and the finger marks pinched onto his waist, he fell into deep contemplation regarding these ambiguous traces. Who exactly did this? Filled with rage, Ju racked his brain but found no clue. However, inside a ship that had just arrived on the desolate planet, he discovered an injured man. The man was unconscious. The gills behind his ears revealed that he was precisely humanity's nemesis, a terrifying high-rank sequencer. Expressionless, Ju rolled up his sleeves and slit the man's throat with a single cut. The next day, K, who had become a corpse, opened his eyes. His dark, husky voice sounded as if it came from hell. "You cannot kill me. But for me to kill you, I only need one chance." Still acting tough? Daggers, bullets, nooses. K died in various ways, only to resurrect the next day. But Ju also lived on edge. Even going to the bathroom, he was deeply afraid of stepping into traps set by K. Fighting with humans isn't scary. What is scary is fighting with the dead, specifically a dead person who might reanimate unexpectedly at any moment. Wearing dark circles under his eyes, physically and mentally exhausted, Ju said, "Bro, we've both fallen to this state. Why don't we get along peacefully and get through this difficulty together?" K pondered deeply. "Fine. But I have one condition." Chapter 1. Dusky yellow dust shrouded the sky. The cracked earth resembled a colossal, boundless chessboard, replete with crisscrossing fissures. Although the air was permeated with the dangerous scent of predators, fear ultimately could not overcome hunger. A foo rat, over a foot in length, quietly crept out of its burrow, searching everywhere for food. The foo rat finally unearthed a cassava tuber, but it was spotted by several wandering steel-maned beasts that rapidly closed in on it. At that moment, a ball of dazzling white light appeared above the desert, piercing through the murky sky. With a piercing, screaming roar, it crashed thunderously to the ground. When the smoke and dust settled, the steel-maned beasts had vanished without a trace. In their place stood a silver-white aircraft, billowing thick smoke. Silence returned to the surroundings. A foo rat crawled out from beneath the aircraft, looked around in terror, and then, clutching its cassava, scurried back toward its burrow. Ju, are you still alive?" Lights flickered on amidst the flat, monotone mechanical voice, illuminating the interior of the aircraft cabin. Seated in the pilot's chair was a young military officer. His head hung slightly low, with black hair resting against his forehead. Only his thick, dark eyelashes and pale profile were visible. His body was secured to the seat by a safety harness. His right hand hung limply by his side, blood dripping from his slender fingers onto the floor, drop by drop. Ju, a robot, about half the height of a human, moved toward Ju. It had only a right arm left, and its left leg was missing a section. As it hobbled forward, the exposed wiring at the severed limb sparked, emitting a hissing sound. The robot reached out to check Ju's pulse, then retrieved a medical kit and plunged a syringe into his neck. Next, it unbuttoned his shirt and sealed the still bleeding wound on his chest with heavy-duty medical tape. Unable to detect apical impulse, respiration has ceased, blood pressure and pulse are gone. You have entered a near-death state. The aircraft has sustained 2 breaches and is no longer airtight. And the robot abruptly stopped speaking and listened intently, then dragged its damaged leg out of the inner cabin. There was a gash over a meter long on the outer cabin wall. The head of a beast, covered in bluish-black scales, had already poked inside and was struggling to squeeze its body through the breach. Ju, I think you need to wake up soon," the robot muttered. A large pack of steel-maned beasts had surrounded the aircraft and had also discovered the breach in the hull. The faint scent of blood wafting from the breach drove the starving beasts to the brink of madness. With crimson eyes, they roared and desperately tried to force their way in, attempting to pry open the already fractured hull around the opening. The robot stepped forward and raised its arm. Its palm retracted, transforming its sole remaining arm into a rotating gun barrel. Bang bang bang. Shell casings and blood spattered everywhere. The steel-maned beast's head was turned into a honeycomb. However, its corpse was immediately dragged out, and another beast thrust its head inside. Amidst the unrelenting gunfire, another 7 or 8 steel-maned beasts fell. The floor near the breach was coated in a thick layer of dark, viscous gore, completely obscuring the original silver-white surface of the cabin. However, the robot suddenly whirled around and moved rapidly toward the inner cabin. A steel-maned beast had already squeezed through another breach in the hull and was lunging at Ji-Ju, who remained unconscious in the pilot's seat. Its fangs, dripping with saliva, were mere inches from the top of his head. The robot fired rapidly. Ji-Ju, I have 32 rounds left. I hope you wake up right now. Ji-Ju remained motionless, head drooping. After killing that steel-maned beast, the robot dared not leave his side. It stood its ground, waiting for them to rush into the inner cabin before opening fire. 30, 29, 18, 17, 3, 2, 1. The robot's arm emitted the clicking sound of an empty chamber. It looked at the steel-maned beasts lunging forward, then glanced back at the comatose Ji-Ju, and stated in a flat, emotionless mechanical voice, "It's over." The steel-maned beasts evidently harbored more hatred for the robot that had been slaughtering them. So, upon flooding into the inner cabin, one clamped the robot in its mouth and roared as it turned back, temporarily ignoring Ji-Ju. After the clamor, the inner cabin returned to silence. Ji-Ju still sat in the pilot's seat, but the fingers hanging by his side suddenly curled, and his long eyelashes trembled slightly. Out on the wasteland, a pack of red-eyed steel-maned beasts clawed and bit at the robot, their fangs making screeching sounds against its metal body. Crack! Its sole remaining arm was torn off. The beasts fought to gnaw on the limb, venting their violent rage. Crack! Its 2 legs were also severed from its body. The robot was left with only a short torso and a round head. Amidst the scramble of the beasts, it was passed from the grip of one set of fangs to another, occasionally being tossed into the air. When it was flung into the sky once again, it saw the dust-covered cabin door of the aircraft slowly slide open. A young, handsome military officer appeared at the entrance. The officer wore combat boots. The trousers encasing his long legs were tucked neatly into the boot shafts. His jacket was half open, revealing blood-stained medical tape and a patch of skin. Ji-Ju. Though the robot had no tears, it felt as if it were on the verge of tearing up. Ji-Ju leaned weakly against the cabin door for support, dragged a half-meter-long mortar from behind him, and slowly hoisted it onto his shoulder. Boom! A shell, trailing a white tail of smoke, flew toward the pack of steel-maned beasts, blasting several of them into the sky. The robot was also sent flying from between rows of jagged fangs, landing with a thud in the yellow dirt. The remaining 100+ steel-maned beasts ceased their clamor, let out hideous roars, and charged in unison toward Ji-Ju. Boom! Boom! 2 more shells left the chamber. The steel-maned beasts collapsed one after another, their severed limbs scattered across the ground. Amidst the billowing dust, a dozen steel-maned beasts were still running. Ji-Ju discarded the mortar tube and drew his service pistol. His lips were pale and devoid of color, accentuating the deep, pitch-black darkness of his eyes. As the steel-maned beasts drew closer, he remained leaning against the cabin door, took aim, and calmly pulled the trigger. As the last steel-maned beast teetered and collapsed, the gunfire ceased. Ji-Ju leaned against the doorframe, coughing violently. A hint of color finally returned to his pale face. Once he regained his breath, he straightened up and stepped forward, the thick soles of his combat boots treading upon the yellow earth. The ground was littered with the corpses of steel-maned beasts. He advanced a short distance, then stopped, panting. "Can you make it over here by yourself?" "No. lying on a dirt mound. The robot looked up at the sky. You could roll over here. I will not. Ji-Ju sighed and navigated around the beast corpses toward the mound. A steel-maned beast that hadn't yet breathed its last struggled up, creeping closer with eyes full of venomous spite. Without even looking, Ji-Ju raised his hand, a gunshot rang out, and the beast's skullcap went flying in response. Ji-Ju stopped in front of the mound, looked at the robot, then at the scattered metal scraps nearby. I think I look quite good this way, and I don't want to roll on the ground. Ji-Ju picked up the robot and walked back. In a nearby burrow, the Fu rat couldn't resist its curiosity and tremblingly poked its head out. Locking eyes with him, Ji-Ju stopped, cast his gaze down at the terrified Fu rat, and said, "Hi." Startled, the Fu rat gave a shiver, hugged its cassava tight, and zipped back into its hole in a flash. "Ji-Ju, could you not grip me by the mouth?" the robot asked. "I would have preferred to carry you by the arm, but you don't have one. Then can you go retrieve my arms and legs? They might be too fragmented, I'd need a magnet." Ji-Ju walked a distance further. The wound on his chest began oozing fresh blood again, his face grew even paler, and his steps started to stagger. "Ji-Ju, Ji-Ju, Ji-Nanjun." "Quiet," Ji-Ju replied in a trance-like state. "I don't want to be noisy. But I won't die." Ji-Ju forced himself to enter the aircraft. The moment he closed the cabin door, his body swayed, and he slowly slid down the wall to the floor. In his groggy, semi-conscious state, he felt as if he had returned to that previous battle, hearing the roar of artillery and the urgent dialogue in his earpiece. "Colonel G, we have arrived, but this place is just a wasteland of ruins. We haven't found any hostages. The situation feels wrong. Colonel G, what do we do now?" The city had been reduced to rubble. The sky crisscrossed with flying artillery shells. Ji-Ju ran through a corridor that seemed to have no end, shouting orders into his headset. "Abort the mission immediately. All teams returned to the aircraft at once and prepared to withdraw to the main star." Just as he finished the order, a beeping alarm sounded in his earpiece, accompanied by a system notification. "Warning. Monitoring detects skeleton concentration in the air has reached 30%. Ji-Ju stopped abruptly, disbelieving. He looked at the monitor on his shoulder and saw a red number clearly pulsating on the screen. 30. A violent roaring echoed in Ji-Ju's brain, and his temples throbbed painfully. He gritted his teeth and shouted sternly into the headset, "Everyone retreat immediately. There is a sequencer undergoing a breakthrough here." The words had barely left his lips when he felt a powerful gravitational force shove him from behind, lifting his entire body into the air and slamming him against the broken wall opposite, before he crashed to the ground amidst debris and rubble. Ji-Ju struggled to crawl up, reaching for the gun that had fallen nearby, but another powerful force struck. It felt like an immense boulder weighing tons was crushing him, rendering him immobile and making it difficult to breathe. His bloodshot eyes felt as though they were about to burst from their sockets. Through his blurred vision, he seemed to see a tall, backlit silhouette slowly approaching. He tried hard to make out the details, but lost consciousness the very next second. Ji-Ju drifted in a murky ocean of unconsciousness, vaguely hearing heavy panting beside his ear and the groans spilling from his own mouth. At one moment, it felt as if the back of his neck were being clamped by the jaws of a beast, teeth gnawing at his skin. His hair was yanked tight, forcing him to tilt his head back and meet a pair of cold, black eyes. He resisted weakly, struggling, only to feel a tearing pain racking his body. Ji-Ju snapped his eyes open, gasping loudly in the darkness. His hands clawed tightly at the floor, veins bulging on the backs of his hands. "Ji-Ju, Ji-Nanjun, Ji-Ju." The robot's voice drifted into his ears. Ji-Ju slowly came to his senses, blinking sluggishly, only then realizing he was still lying inside the battered aircraft. He looked at the robot lying beside him and asked in a hoarse voice, "Wu Siki. How long was I out?" "Not too long, 2.5 hours. Robot Unit 547 thought for a moment. "I re-treated your wounds, sutured and bandaged them, And also administered a cardiac stimulant and antibiotics. You didn't need to give me the cardiac stimulant. Ji-ju replied wearily. I was afraid you were dead. I won't die. Ji-ju realized that he and the robot were lying right by the cabin entrance. Their bodies coated in foul-smelling, dark black blood. Beside them lay several corpses of the steel-maned beasts. Looking at the medical kit beside him, he asked, You don't have any arms. How did you administer the injection? The robot shook its head. I can use my head to push it. Then how did you bring the medical kit over? The robot was slightly irritable. I can use my head to push. I was referring to your legs. Ji-ju propped himself up to a sitting position. Did you roll into the inner cabin and then roll back out? The robot kept its mouth tightly shut, refusing to answer the question. Ji-ju looked up at the cabin ceiling and smiled, then asked, Where are we? The aircraft won't start right now, and the instruments are down, so navigation is impossible. I am not sure which planet this is. What about the communicator? Can we establish contact with the military? The communicator has been reduced to a pile of scrap. Ji-ju slowly stood up to inspect the breach in the hull. The soles of his boots stepped into the black blood oozing from the steel-maned beasts, making a sticky, squelching sound. The atmosphere here is suitable for human survival. Plus there are steel-maned beasts and foo rats. It should be planet H58. We need to patch this breach immediately. Otherwise, if we encounter more beasts, we'll fill their stomachs before the military ever finds us. Ji-ju rolled up his sleeves. Wu Siki, bring me the toolbox. The robot remained silent. Ji-ju turned to look at it and chuckled again. Sorry, I forgot. Ji-ju surveyed the surroundings. I'll rig up something for you to get around first, then you can go outside and find your arm. 10 minutes later, the robot's halved torso was secured onto an electric skateboard. Nudging the control stick with its head, it exited the aircraft. Ji-ju, wearing a protective welding mask, sat before the breach, using a welding torch to fuse a metal plate onto the cabin wall. Wu Siki, do you remember how I got back to the aircraft? Did my soldiers successfully evacuate? You don't remember? The robot's voice came through the headset. Sparks danced across the visor of the mask. Behind it, Ji-ju's beautiful eyes looked somewhat bewildered. I've lost part of my memory. I only remember that yesterday we had just entered Red Tooth City on planet XUAN-5. But we didn't find any hostages and were ambushed instead. There was a sequencer undergoing a breakthrough there. Just as I ordered the retreat, I was hit by the energy shockwave and fell unconscious. Ji-ju stopped speaking abruptly. Vague images surfaced in his mind, heavy panting, the back of his neck being clamped by teeth, cold black eyes. Everything felt so surreal, making him feel as though these were merely hallucinations born from his coma. However, a strange sensation inevitably rose in his heart, and he subconsciously reached out to touch the back of his neck. And then? The robot asked. Ji-ju's fingers grazed the back of his neck. The skin there was intact, with no scars or signs of having been bitten or torn. When I woke up again, I was right here, he murmured. You probably made it back to the aircraft on your own. The robot replied. Probably? The robot remained silent for 2 seconds, after the aircraft landed in Red Tooth City. The moment you left, I was hit by a powerful energy shockwave. So I also fell into a coma. The robot paused before adding, system crash. When I rebooted, we were already in the middle of a forced landing. Since I was able to pilot the aircraft away, then the soldiers must have all evacuated as well? Yes, otherwise you wouldn't have left. Ji-ju didn't press further, focusing instead on welding the breach. Suddenly, the robot let out a cheer. I picked up a toe. And it's my most perfect big toe. Congratulations. Ji-ju had just cracked a faint smile when he began to cough again. He reached up to cover his chest, the movement tugged at his wound, eliciting a muffled groan. Are you all right? Ji-ju wiped the corner of his mouth. I won't die. I checked. That wound isn't a combat injury. It was caused by a piece of flying metal debris piercing your chest during the aircraft's forced landing. If it had deviated just a little bit, it would have pierced your heart. The robot thought for a moment. However, you have some bruises on your body. They might have been caused by impacts from many flying metal fragments. Ji-Ju turned off the welding torch and pulled his collar open, discovering that his entire chest was covered in bruises of varying depths. Somewhat astonished, he unbuttoned his shirt completely, watching the purplish bruising extend all the way down into his waistband. On the sides of his waist, there were also several clusters that looked like finger marks left by a forceful grip. Aside from the wound, the atmospheric pressure during the forced landing also compressed your internal organs. So you nearly died. As Ji-Ju frowned and thought, the robot asked through the headset, "Do you feel injured anywhere else?" Ji-Ju remained silent, not snapping back to reality until the robot's persistent questioning broke through. "Ji-Ju, are you injured anywhere else? Ji-Ju?" The Silver Alliance military's medicine was highly effective. Ji-Ju tilted his head to assess his condition. The wound already felt much better, and a significant amount of strength had returned to his body. However, there was a dull ache in his lower abdomen, and a certain unmentionable area behind him also felt somewhat strange. End of Chapter 1. Please follow, like, share, and comment on English Stories 1, 2, 3 to keep enjoying many great stories. Thank you.